Warning: the following video contains explicit language, which may be offensive to some viewers or inappropriate for children. The content within this video is intended for mature audiences only.
Hello everybody, it's Jeff. Look, I found a video here that I think you all should watch. It's about 30 minutes long, and it explains a lot about what's happening. Basically, what's happening, why Trump is doing what he's doing, why Musk was doing what he was doing, and what businesses are up to in this country here, and how this is not only going to make our lives miserable, but it's going to affect other countries as well and make their lives miserable, and the fallouts of things that are coming. Now, I'm giving you this video. I'm encouraging you to watch it. It's very informative. It's very easy to understand, and I think it would benefit anyone who's watching it, but I wouldn't suggest that MAGA watch it, because unfortunately for them, they're not able to really understand these things about economies and stuff like that. So I would suggest that MAGA, if you're watching any of my videos, this is one you're going to want to skip, because you're not going to find it at all very believable or interesting. You'll just walk away even madder that how dare the Democrats try to okay, so forget it, because I'm not gonna discuss with you in the comments what was put in this video. Okay, I simply, like I said, I'm not going to waste my breath arguing with people who are an occult mentality, because you're not going to want to hear it. All right, so for everybody else though, I think you ought to watch this, because it will explain and give you an idea what the hell's going on and why it's happening. So let's go to the video here, and this is a short, so there won't be any discussion of it after that. But I want you to watch this. Information is key to understanding the things that go on in America here. So let's watch that.
The United States is now called, in a growing number of quite conventional newspapers in Europe, it is referred to as, quote unquote, a rogue state. You're the bad guy. I'm an American. We are the bad guys. We're shaking everything up. We're making everybody else pay for our economic difficulties, which we got ourselves into. They're not happy with this at all. Our alliances are very weak because of it. It's not just that Mr. Trump wants to put a tariff on Mexico, or a tariff on Canada, or a tariff on Europe, all of which he's trying to do. It's the outrage that people who feel they've been close allies are now being treated really shabbily. And I don't think that's at all a misunderstanding. I think where it takes us is one of the points I want to leave you with. Mr. Trump's regime is a regime best understood as a regime of desperation. This is a society having a very hard time facing that the empire is over, that it has real competition. I want to remind you, every major high-tech firm we have in Silicon Valley has its equal in China. We don't stand out relative to them at all, despite the fact that they have 4 times the population we do. The BRICS, China and its allies, is over half the population of this planet. The United States is 4.5% of this planet. Think about it. Which side are you on is going to become an important question in your life. This is an enormous amount of material, even in the summary way I've presented it, for you to take in. I know that. On the other hand, what is the option? To go along with the make-believe every night on the television, where everything is where the most exciting thing is whether the interest rate will go up a little or go down. Stop. You have a cancer and you're worried about where the Band-Aid goes. Band-Aid isn't what we need anymore. We need big changes in our foreign policy, in our domestic policy. But we don't get that. What we do get is a horrible scapegoating among the worst kinds of scapegoating I've ever seen. And that's what we are doing to the quote-unquote undocumented immigrants of this country. What are we doing? Yanking people out of their homes, off their jobs, putting them on an airplane to deposit them into a jail in El Salvador whose conditions are beyond human decency. What? These are people who've worked here for 20 years, paid taxes here for 20 years. What are we doing? Where did we get off doing such a thing? A country that used to pride itself on being the place to which immigrants come, having absorbed many immigrants, having to say, which is true, that the immigrants help build whatever this country has. Well, what are you doing, chucking them out? What in the world would make you do that, given your own history? The answer is desperation. The mass of the people in this country are being abandoned. The corporations did that when they moved to China, to India. They said goodbye. We can make more money somewhere else. You do know that's how capitalism works. Once American industry was in New England, then it went to the mid-Atlantic states, then it went to the Midwest, then it went to the Southwest. Notice something? The places that it left don't look so good. If you go to Western Massachusetts, you'll see lots of old 4-story brick buildings, which is where the factories used to be. They are now half-rented yoga studios. I have nothing against yoga. We have to tell the American people something about why their situation is deteriorating. And so we do. We point the finger at the immigrants. And we point the finger at the Chinese, as if the Chinese came and took the factories out of the United States. Roughly half of what comes from China into this country now is materials produced there by subsidiaries of American corporations who went there when it was profitable. No one held a gun to their head. No American did, no Chinese did either. If you don't like the outcome, and I hope you don't, then you have to understand, and this, I plead with you, this is not the problem of this or that government. What Mr. Trump is doing is very ugly on its own terms. But all of this started before Mr. Trump, and most of it will likely continue after Mr. Trump. He's just one of a series of people who pretended not to know it, pretended not to see it, substituted a political theater for all of us to be absorbed by, while he blamed immigrants. One more statistic. The United States has 330 million people. Estimates of undocumented immigrants, 10, maybe 12 million people. There is no way that 10 or 12 of the poorest people on earth are the cause of the problems of a wealthy economy of 330 million people. That is ridiculous. You have to work very hard to persuade people who are in trouble, who have lost their jobs, lost their futures, and don't see much of one for their kids either. Their suffering is genuine. Their suffering ought to get from us empathy, sympathy, absolutely. But that's always a situation where demagogic politicians see a chance. I can become the voice, as Mr. Trump says, I'm your revenge. And who are you going to take your revenge on? Central American families, desperate poor who lost a little trek to get up here, because they wanted to do in the United States what all of the rest of us who are Americans, we know our ancestors did the same, more or less. What country does that to itself? We are doing it. We cannot contain China. Or let me put it more drastically. China has nuclear weapons, Russia has nuclear weapons, and one of the consequences of the United States' effort to fight China economically and to fight Russia in Ukraine has to bring those two countries closer together than they have ever been. We are not able to contain China. It's too late, and we have too little in the way of means of doing it. We could have this Cold War, this economic war, degenerate into a military war. But then it's over for all of us, and, game over. So, what's the option? There are four major parts of what Mr. Trump's government is trying to do, okay? The first one, I don't pick it in order of importance, but the first one has a theatrical cover which has absolutely nothing to do with it, called the Department of Governmental Efficiency. It is that part of this activity that Mr. Trump turned over to Elon Musk. Elon Musk has therefore gone ahead and done what this is about. What is it about? Answer: it is about reducing the spending of money by the federal government on you, every one of you. That's all it's about. All the rest, I'm going to use now a technical term in economics, is bullshit. This has nothing to do with efficiency. I have worked on efficiency studies because they often use economists, and you get paid much better than you do for teaching to do an efficiency study for a corporation. You go in, you study what the work is they do, you study how the work is being performed, and you come up with suggestions, usually takes months, of how you could do this more efficiently. You can do that, bureaucracies often do that periodically. That's not what this is. Why? Because Mr. Musk just went in and fired 5,000 people here, 10,000 people over there. It had nothing to do with efficiency. Calling it efficiency is designed, and please understand me when I say this, is designed so that you do not understand what's going on. Don't blame yourself that you haven't understood it. You have been the object of a program to make sure you didn't understand it. Oh, they're trying to make the government more efficient. Oh, no, they're not. They could care less about how efficient it is. And let me show you in a couple of examples how and why that is. Is the federal government, and that's where all the firings are happening, is the federal government where most people who work for the government in the United States, is that where they are? And the answer is no. The federal government has two kinds of employees, civilian and military. It's about 5 million people. Half of them are in the military, the soldiers and all the people who work in the military apparatus. The other half, 2.5 million, keep that number in your head, 2.5 million are civilian employees of the federal government. That's where Mr. Musk has gone to fire huge numbers of people. Terrible for them, terrible for their families, terrible for whatever that agency is that they are supposed to work for because they're not there anymore. But let's go back and keep the number, 2.5 million. Where do people who work for the government in this country work? Do they work for the federal government? No. We have 50 state governments, New York and the other 49. Each of them have government employees that are civilian. How many of them are there? 5 million. So twice the number of federal. But you all know, I hope, that our government in this country operates at 3 levels: federal, state, and local. Local is the city of New York or the village or the town or the county where you might live and work. How many people work for the government at the bottom level? Answer, 15 million. So if you put the local government employees together with the state government employees, 15 plus 5, that's 20 million government employees. What is Mr. Musk doing with them? Answer, absolutely nothing. What is that? Because they're efficient? You don't need it? Let me give you another statistic. That's our job. We're economists. We study this sort of junk. Here's a little statistic. I went back and I looked in 1965. How many civilian employees did the United States federal government have in 1965? About 2.5 million. Wow, 2.5 million then. And here we are, half a century later, still got 2.5 million. Meanwhile, the population in the United States has grown by 70, 80 million people. You know what that means in economics? If the same number of workers are serving a much larger population, that's called an example of efficiency. Be the last place you'd look if you were interested in efficiency. Mr. Musk is lying through his teeth, and he knows it. The only question really is, do you know it? Do the people around you know it? Well, then what is the point if it isn't efficiency? Answer, saving money. You see, the Republicans in the old days would quarrel. Let's not have this program, this program for schools, or this program for elderly people, or this program to build highways. And they'd argue about the program, and they didn't get very far. People kind of saw, oh, I want the highway. I want the program for the elderly. I like my Social Security. So they came up with a new way. Don't talk about the program. Talk about the people. We're getting rid of the extra unnecessary people. We're going to make it more efficient. Sounds much better. But it's not. It's all the same game to cut the spending. And now I hope you're wondering, well, why would the government want to be cutting the spending? Let me tell you, because they won't. When Mr. Trump was president the first time, the only economic achievement he could point to, and some of you may remember this, was a tax cut. It was passed by the Congress in December of 2017 and became the law in 2018. It gave an enormous tax cut to corporations and the rich. If you don't remember it, it's because it didn't help you, not part of your memory. Those extra 42 cents didn't make that big a difference. But if you were rich, you remember real well, and you feel very warm right here for Mr. Trump. He did you a big service. The Democrats, you remember them? The Democrats, who are supposed to be the opposition, I'm being here as polite as I know how to be. The Democrats, who should be the opposition, didn't fight that bill very hard, and so it became law. But they did get a concession. Here comes the important point. Into the bill was written that it expires 8 years later in the year 2025, the one we're in. And that means unless Mr. Trump can get this done, at the end of this year, corporations and the rich will have to go back to the taxes they had to pay before they got that nice cut in 2017. And that would be as unpleasant an increase as it was joyful to get the cut in the first place. Those are the people that fund Mr. Trump, the ones who are going to get it. Therefore, for him to stay in office, for him to have a chance, even in the elections coming a year from this November, the so-called midterms, we call them, he's got to deliver to rich people and corporations an extension of the tax bill that was passed in 2017. And the problem is, if he does that, there's no money coming in because he's going to extend their tax cut. And if there's no money coming in, well, then how is he going to take care of the Medicaid and the Medicare and all the other obligations of the government? He can't. In fact, what does the government do when it spends more than it takes in taxes? Well, when that happens, the government has to do what you and I would have to do. If we're going to spend more than the income we get from our jobs or our salary or our wages, we borrow. That's what those plastic cards that are overflowing in your pocketbook, that's what they're about. So you can borrow. The government borrows. Well, what's necessary for the government to borrow is somebody willing to lend to the government. Now, that's information most of you don't need to know because you've never been in the position of someone from the government knocking on your door and saying, hey, I need a loan. But if you're wealthy, you have had this experience. Corporations and the rich, why do they lend to the government? Well, first of all, because they have a lot of money. And why do they have a lot of money? Because the government doesn't tax them. Do you understand? When the government runs a debt, this is you being hustled. They're treating you like you're 4 years old. The government doesn't tax these people. Then, because it has to borrow, it goes to them. It says, we didn't tax you, so we don't have enough, so we need to borrow. Would you be so kind as to lend it to us? Which, of course, rich people and corporations giggle and say, yes, if I have to choose between giving you the money as a tax and giving you the money as a loan that you have to pay me back plus interest, that's not a very hard choice, is it? Well, who in the end pays them back? And who in the end pays the interest? You do. That's why you pay your taxes, so they don't. Now, why would the government then not just borrow again? So it wouldn't have to cut those federal jobs. Well, it would just borrow if it could get someone to lend. But now you have the best part of the story. Corporations and the rich have told the government, started about 3 weeks ago, we're not willing to lend you anymore because you're too deep in debt. You're too risky to lend to. The United States Labor Department and the Trump administration made a decision. Actually, Mr. Trump made it. He let everyone know he made it. He instructed the Labor Department to change the existing law. Under the existing law here in the United States, any business that does work on contract for the federal government is required to pay a specific minimum wage. It's not the same as the minimum wage in the United States, which is an extraordinarily low $7.25. Now, this is the minimum wage for people who work on a contract for the federal government. What was it? It was $17.75. It had been raised a while back. Mr. Obama, if my memory's correct, had set it at $13.30 an hour, and then it was raised to $17.75 an hour. Now, during the first Trump administration, he didn't do anything about it. But now, in the second Trump administration, he has. And I want you to know what he's done, and I want you to think about what it means. He chose to reduce the minimum wage, to cancel that part of the law so that the government doesn't have to mandate or require those it contracts with to pay a minimum wage of $17.75 an hour anymore. That will lower the wage to what it was before, or maybe even lower. It's important to understand, it's one thing to allow inflation to erode what you can buy with your wage. It's another thing to directly diminish your wage. Hundreds of thousands, millions of workers work on contracts with the federal government. Those on the minimum wage are going to take a real hit. From $17.75 to $13.30 these days is quite a cut in your salary. Then there's Elon Musk, who recently said that he's in favor of privatizing Amtrak and the post office. Now, this reminds me of a very old argument given by right-wing business types. Here's how the argument goes. Amtrak is not making a lot of money, or it's losing. The post office is not making a lot of money, or it's losing money. And now let's compare that with private enterprises. And private enterprises, if they don't make money, go out of business. See how much more efficient the private is than the public. Now, I know it's not polite, and I'm going to take a moment to be impolite. This argument is fundamentally stupid. Let me explain why. If the Amtrak were going to charge the money it would have to be profitable, which it can do, it doesn't have competitors for many of its runs, that would make it profitable, not a problem. But you know who would pay for that? You would, and I would, and every business that uses the rail system would face higher costs. By lowering the price, having the government run the railroad, it operates like a subsidy to private enterprise. Part of the reason private enterprises have whatever profit they do is because the railroad system operates, at least in part, at a loss, the public one. And this is even more true for the post office. By having the cost of your mail lower, but everybody else gets the benefit. The profits of every company are higher than they'd otherwise be if they had to pay for the mail service what would profit a private mail. And if Mr. Elon Musk is correct and wins and gets it to be private, not only will he be probably among those who bid to do it, he wants that profit, but he'll charge a price, and all of us will learn what I'm explaining now, that this was not a good idea. Good for Mr. Musk, good for the private profiteers, but for the rest of us, including lots of private businesses, no. Don't make stupid comparisons. They lead to stupid policies. What are Mr. Trump's actions doing? Well, I want to focus on something you may not have thought about. When you deport large numbers of people, when you block immigration, whatever else you think about that, here are some of the economic consequences. In recent years, for example, even last year, 2024, Mexico, our big example, received $64.7 billion in remittances. Here's what that means. Mexican citizens emigrate, leave Mexico, come to the United States. In the United States, they take jobs. That's what the overwhelming majority of them have to do and do. They pay taxes to the United States government on what they earn. That's the law. And they, more than anybody, do not violate that law because it would risk not just the usual penalties, but the risk, especially now, of being deported or otherwise harassed by the authorities. And they live frugally. Why? Because they have to not only pay taxes on their earnings, but they send money home to help their families, just as every other immigrant population in the history of the United States did. But for Mexico, it adds up to 4% of their annual GDP. It's an enormous support. And then I started looking into it, and here's what I found. For Nicaragua, it's 27%. For Honduras, 25%. For El Salvador, 23%. For Guatemala, 19%. Haiti, 18%. And Jamaica, 18%. Huge benefit to those economies. They rely on it. If you don't let those people come in anymore, and we don't, and if you deport large numbers of them, and we do, the remittances will stop. They already have. Now you're hitting these economies with an incredible 1-2 punch. You are forcing back into that economy millions of American residents being pushed back. There are no jobs for them now, but there are going to be even fewer jobs because they can't bring any remittances anymore. They're not working in the United States. They can't send money home. So the economy will contract just as millions of young working age people come back looking for work. You know what you're doing to Central America? You're blowing it up. You're creating unlivable, dangerous, violent social conditions, which will come back to haunt the United States, threaten the United States. Is anyone even asking the question, is this worthwhile? What we are doing to our own country by hurting all these people and these countries in this way? Forget just the hatred, the social disruption. We will be hearing and reading about it as Mr. Trump's policies work their damage. If you want to understand why Mr. Trump decided that migration is a problem, that those poor immigrants from Central America are something he's going to fight against, because they're foreign. And Americans seem to like to blame foreigners. Look at Mr. Trump. Canada, never done us any harm at all, is suddenly evil. To quote Mr. Trump, nasty. They are nasty people. What? He can talk about them. This sounds like he used to talk about the Soviets. And it should remind you of that. Mexico, listen to Mr. Trump. The whole world is cheating us. Europe is cheating us. We're going to hit them with tariffs to fight back against these foreigners cheating us. The story of blaming them, it's always a foreigner. It's not a problem here. For example, it's not a problem that we have 3% of our people who are employers, and the other 97% are not. They're mostly employees. We allow the 3% employers to set the prices of everything we buy in the store. And they do it to help them, make profit for them, make them rich, and us not. They're the ones who donate to the candidates. They're the ones who sit behind the president, the billionaires. Come on. You don't think we have problems at home we ought to deal with? Of course you do. Of course you do. Blaming the foreigner. Here's the part about it. It's not that the foreigners are blameless. Of course they're not. no more or less, than anybody else. But we live in a country that has made a very dangerous habit of not looking honestly or debating openly the problems we have as a society, and particularly our economic system that divides us into a small minority that own and operate the businesses and the rest of us that work from and buy from them. That's where we have to go. That's what we haven't done. And we shouldn't be fooled and misled by people who just want us once again to rev up the idea that those foreigners who are migrating in, and those bad Canadians, and those Mexicans, and those Europeans who cheat us, come on. We're bigger, we're better, and we're smarter than all of that. Don't be fooled. One of the ways Mr. Trump might have tried to do what he's doing is by smashing down workers' wages. The problem is he would lose every election and he would suddenly be unable to do anything if he dared to do that. You can't do that politically in the United States. Let me remind everyone, Donald Trump defeated Kamala Harris by 1.5% of the votes cast in this country. The reason he keeps talking about a mandate is because he doesn't have one. And he has to talk it up in the hope that people either don't know or won't remember that this was a close election, not a blowout or anything like that. 1.5% more votes were for Mr. Trump than for Kamala Harris. This is a country that split pretty much 50-50 in the last election. If he dared to propose, as of tomorrow, everybody takes a 20% wage cut, they'd laugh him out of office or do it in another not-so-funny way. So he can't do that. And by the way, let's remember, one of the most important things that got people to vote for him was the upset in the United States among working-class people about the inflation. Letting prices go up more than wages, which is what we did in 2021, 2022, and so forth. That's what lost the election for the Democrats, who were blamed for this. He is going to be blamed too if he dared to allow prices to go up. And one of the things to worry about is when you put a tax on imported goods, it means the cost of them here in the United States goes up, and that worsens the inflation.